Don't overdo it. As athletes, we want to constantly push and push and push. Sometimes that's not beneficial. Emma, you got to stop trying to prove to people that you're meant to be here. I struggle with patience a lot. And when I think about it, I really had to just be patient in my dreams and in my goals. I had this goal of going to the Olympics, and I thought that it was going to happen for me in 2016, and it happened 8 years later. You just keep doing what you do. Doesn't mean you need to be on a completely linear path, but you can achieve the things that you want as long as you keep working towards it and just let it be and go with the flow. Doesn't matter if you stuff it up. Doesn't matter if you fall off. Get up there and give it a go. That's the only way we're going to get it better.
Hi, I am Tatjana Pandurovic, and welcome to Moonshot, a space where comfort zones don't exist. Having spent most of my life scared to take risks, the one thing I am seeking now is to be surrounded by more people who are courageous, bold, unafraid, and relentless in their pursuit for success to help inspire me and hopefully you. In this podcast, we dive deep into the minds of individuals who see no limits, those who dream big and defy boundaries. Today on Moonshot, I'm excited to welcome Emma Nedov, also known as the Beam Queen. Emma's journey in gymnastics has been marked by 22 years of dedication, 2 Missed Olympics, 2 retirements, and a triumphant comeback that led her to the 2024 Olympics in Paris. Her resilience and unwavering determination have not only earned her a World Cup gold medal and multiple national titles, but have also cemented her as one of Australia's most inspiring athletes. In this episode, we'll explore Emma's remarkable comeback journey, how she trained for only 6 months after a 3-year break to return to the highest levels of competition, her mental strategies for performing at the highest levels, and the people who supported her along the way. Beyond gymnastics, Emma is a health coach, entrepreneur, board member, and podcast host, a testament that her high-performance mindset extends beyond the gym. If you're inspired by stories of resilience, high performance, and the courage to chase big dreams, this is an episode you won't want to miss. Let's dive in. Emma, thank you so much for joining. I've been researching your journey and your story, and I was just inspired at everything that you've achieved, and I can't wait to have this conversation with you.
Oh, thank you. Likewise, even just sitting here having a little bit of a pre-chat, I'm really looking forward to what we can pull out of both of us today.
No, absolutely. So after 22 years, I want to get right into it, and 2 Missed Olympics and 2 retirements, you finally made it to the Olympics this year in Paris. What did this mean to you, and how did it feel when you found out that you made the team?
Wow, okay. It was very special for many reasons, right? Obviously, the ones that you've just outlined. So when I officially got selected on the team, it was actually through a Teams interview sort of style that I got told by the selection committee. So I was in my house and I was just on my computer, and I had my sister, who I live with, sitting next to me out of camera frame, and my boyfriend as well, and my parents were on FaceTime. And you know, it's because it was a whole family experience. We had all been on this 22-year journey together. And so when I got told, I think all 5 of us were just like, what? This is insane. So it was just incredible. And when I was even there at the Olympics, I had a lump in my throat. And it was because I couldn't believe that I'd actually finally done it. And I'm sure we'll get into this, but when I hung up my boots and I said I'm done in 2020, I was really happy with retiring as never being an Olympian.
With yourself and the decision that you made.
Yeah, I was really okay with not being an Olympian. So to finally stand there, it felt like I was at the Olympics for 2016 and 2020, Emma. However, on the flip side, it was also a little bit difficult being there because I'd only had about 9 months of training. So I didn't feel like I was quite at my peak.
It must have been such a pinch-me moment and a reflection over such an intense career of so many highs and so many lows as well as you experience in sport. So you were, as I understand, you were away from gymnastics for about 3 years?
Yeah, 3.5 years. Yep.
Had about, you said 9 months of training, made the Olympic team. What did your training program look like to be able to achieve such feat?
Well, okay, firstly, I had to get a really good team around me. So fortunately, out of the gymnastics space, I had started working as a sports nutritionist. So I now had a wealth of knowledge in health and nutrition through the company I work with, Simpler Health, right? So I equipped myself with, okay, good fueling, first and foremost. What's also important to note is that I'm now an older athlete, right? So my training style had to change a little bit, and I put a big emphasis on strength. So fueling, strength, and then injury prevention was probably my biggest thing as well. I had a physio, Maverick, who I worked with like once or twice a week, a chiropractor, Steve, who was incredible. I had worked for him when I had just moved to Melbourne. So I turned around one day and said, I'm going to go to the Olympics. Do you want to be my chiro? And he said, absolutely. So he supported me through it as well. And then my gymnastics training, I didn't train as often. So I really emphasized rest and recovery. I did a lot of mental training. So I had my sports psych. I would do a lot of visualization because I really had to balance my body's capability with the loading, right? Because like I said, I didn't want to get injured. I'd had a very big break. My body was not as fit, physically. It's really difficult to maintain a gymnastics lifestyle.
Oh, I can imagine.
Right? So I trained at the beginning, maybe 3-4 times a week. I asked an incredible coach, Mark, to come and work with me. He'd had experience with adult gymnasts over in Wales and in the US doing college gymnastics. So he knew how to look after me, right? The most important thing he said to me one day was, you have to work with your physicality rather than make it work for you. And that was really eye-opening for me because in the past, I would try and get myself as fit as possible to then try and work on skills. Whereas it was now, okay, well, we've got to slowly build back your skills, slowly but quickly, right? How are we going to do that in the most protective manner that's going to get the best out of you?
Did that help alleviate the mental pressure as well? Because I know as an athlete, you're striving for almost a form of perfection. You typically have higher expectations of yourself than others have of you. Like it's a constant journey of managing this self-critique, just that you're managing that high performance expectation that you have. Did that help you shift your mindset in just leading up into the preparation?
Oh, 100%. One day I was standing up on the beam. And I've had phenomenal beam coaches throughout my career, which is why beam is something that's my specialty. Now, Mark, my coach, I wouldn't say he's got a specialty event really. He's just an all-round fantastic coach. So he's standing there watching me do beam and he said to me, okay, Emma, are you ready to do flip, right? So it's 2 of the same skill. And I was just doing 1 at this stage. And I said, oh, no, I'm not ready yet. It's not perfect yet. And those were the exact words that came out of my mouth. And Mark looked at me and he said, okay, you come here. He's fantastic for his motivational chats. And he said to me, it's not about being perfect. If we wait until you're perfect, we're not going to make the Olympics, okay? You get up there and you work on it until it gets perfect. You're safe. You can do it. You know that you can do it and you're physically capable. Doesn't matter if you stuff it up. Doesn't matter if you fall off. Get up there and give it a go. That's the only way we're going to get it better. And it was like this light bulb moment. I was like, I've never thought that way before. I've always done things to perfection before building on it. And I was like, that's a really limiting way of dealing with things.
And of thinking through. And you just place all this unnecessary pressure in a way on yourself as well.
Yeah, there's no such thing as perfect.
No, what was the toughest part in building back your skills and confidence in that period after having what is quite a prolonged time off from the sport?
Actually the toughest part was my fear of judgment. I was
How do you mean?
I was really nervous about what the other people would say in gymnastics
like
about
within
me.
the gymnastics community?
Yeah, I was really nervous about how it would appear. Even being at Olympic camp, one of the biggest things that my sports psych worked with me on was, Emma, you got to stop trying to prove to people that you're meant to be here. I really had a little bit of that self-doubt and that imposter syndrome of being nervous because I'd had so much time off. That's really not something that elite athletes, in particular gymnasts, do. And so I was kind of breaking the barrier a little bit there. And it was really both exciting but also really terrifying because I was scared of what people were going to say about me. And that's, a long-running theme. I think a lot of athletes that we're in the limelight a lot, we're being judged constantly. So we're used to being judged, but it doesn't make it any less daunting. So that was probably the biggest barrier, was actually trying to get people to understand why I was doing it and that I deserved to be there and that I had worked bloody hard to be there as well.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Just like all those kind of internal thoughts that aren't evident or obvious when you're watching an athlete, like especially as most people, you're watching you perform on TV, which looks absolutely amazing, incredible. But the journey and all the things that you go through, both physically and mentally, are not evident to most people.
Yeah.
You've spoken so much already about some of the people that were really influential and key to you, and you had obviously a different level of awareness about your body and the stage of your career, and you've leveraged all these different aspects from psych to nutrition. Something that I've definitely noticed, and I told you a bit earlier, I trained to be a professional tennis player when I was younger, which is also an individual sport. But people also don't realise how much of a team effort it is to support an individual athlete to perform at their highest. What are the people around you, or how do they impact you, and what role did they have?
That's a great question. I think also what's kind of funny is that at one point I called like a bit of a meeting with my team. So I had somewhat created a little team around me, right? I had Dean, who's my mentor and nutritionist, and Trevor. And then I had Dave, my sports psychologist, Mark, my coach, Alan, my strength coach, Steve, my chiro, Maverick, my physio, like this whole little team, right? And I called a meeting. And I said, okay, we've got a checkpoint, right? And I thought to myself, it's an Emma team meeting. I was like, this is hilarious. I feel like I'm running my own little business right now. And I literally said, I feel like I'm a tennis player. Yeah. I've got my little team around me that I'm paying to, like, fitness trainer. You've got your masseuse. Like, everyone's there. Everyone's got a purpose. Jenny, my masseuse. I've got Lucy, my gym manager. Like, it was hilarious. What they brought to me was I brought them all in because I noticed that there's a lot of things that I can't do myself, right? What I'm really good at is being an athlete. I'm really good at doing what I'm told, okay? In particular, Mark was phenomenal for that. You know, I'd have days in the gym where I'd say, oh, I can totally do a couple more. And he'd say, nope, don't you dare. You've already done enough today. And I'd be like, what? But he could just see something that, you know, I couldn't see. Like time to take a break for the day. Yeah, don't overdo it, right? That was a really big thing that Mark helped me with. Don't overdo it. As athletes, we want to constantly push and push and push. Sometimes that's not beneficial. So not only was it that aspect of bringing their expertise to be able to support me, they had an undeniable belief that I could do it. When I turned around and I said, hey guys, I think I'm going to go back to gymnastics after 3.5 years off, not one person said you can't do that within that team. The first people I called was obviously my parents, because I said, hey guys, can you please help me pay for gymnastics? We're doing this again. We're going at this again. Oh my gosh. And they were like, Emma, really? But they turned around and they said, absolutely. Like, of course we're going to support you. My beautiful boyfriend, who had met me outside of gymnastics, so it was in that 3-year break, had no idea about my past in gymnastics. He'd been a gymnast himself, so we kind of had that crossover. But he turned around and said, Emma, whatever you say you can do, you put your mind to it and you get it done. So I believe in you. And he was like my #1 fan at Nationals and at Olympics. That's amazing. It's hilarious. He's in the background of all my videos. I saw one of your videos when you were actually at the Olympics and you had a bit of a stumble and you can see you were like really trying to hold yourself together and he's just running down. He's like running down the podium, like a really special moment. Yeah, my absolute #1 supporter. Same with my sister. My parents said to me, well, you've got to get your sister's approval because she's the one living with you. So she's going to be the one dealing with your emotions going through this journey. I said, absolutely. Same thing. You know, we wrote up a pros and cons list on my window at my apartment. So we had I had a whiteboard texter and on the wall there was pros and cons and we wrote down, what's the pros of doing gymnastics again? What are the cons? What were some of the pros and cons that you listed out? Okay, now I had forgotten I'd done that until just now. Let me have a think. So one of the pros was to give me like purpose right now, give me a short-term goal to work towards what I was hoping to achieve. Because what I was hoping to achieve as well out of it was to inspire people, right? So that was a goal, works towards my, future goal. And then I think my sister wrote down, get to compete with Simone Biles again. A con was can't party as much. Social life toned down. Yeah. I think Julian wrote, spend less time with Julian because you're traveling. Fair. Yeah. Fair. So they were all those types of things. But most of the pros were that it aligned with where I wanted to go in future. I had found throughout my break a newfound love and passion for sport and gymnastics. And as I'm sure we'll sort of get into, the retirement space and how there's a lack of support there. And so going back into gymnastics also gave me an opportunity to create a voice. You know, I get to sit here today because I went on that journey. And so I really saw that as a really big driver and a really big pro on my pros list. But yeah, so essentially my team just really believed in me. They brought to me an undoubted, like just true belief that built that within me because, of course, when I said, hey, I'm going to go back to gymnastics, there was half of me thinking, I hope someone tells me I'm crazy and do not do this. No one did that. Everyone said I was crazy, but no one said I couldn't do it.
But that's amazing. And I can imagine the feeling you would have had when you found out you made the team, you're going to Paris, you're going to the Olympics, but everyone that was around you as well, who's been on your journey probably for a very long time, and they're also so vested, and it must have been really special for them as well.
There were some grown men tears. Yeah, there were some tears.
I can imagine. So tell me about the Olympics. You're there for the first time. What was that experience like?
Oh, surreal. What a surreal experience to just be there. You have no idea what the Olympics itself is going to be like until you get there. You've heard stories or you kind of have an understanding. You map out what the village is going to be like, and then you get there and it's nothing like what you could have imagined. It's 10 times better. So that part, like the actual Olympics itself, was just incredible.
What stood out the most for you? Is it the atmosphere? Is there just kind of the feeling of being there and around the grounds? Like what is it that?
Yeah, the village to me was the most powerful part, right? You're inside this little world. It feels like you're in a tiny little world with the best athletes across the entire globe.
In
right?
all different sports.
All different sports. You walk past buildings that have flags of countries that I just forgot existed, right? Like, and then also to add to that, Australia did such a fantastic job to look after us.
And what an Olympics for Australia as well.
Oh, and I just walked away so patriotic. Like I was like, oh, yes, I'm so proud to be Australian.
As you should have been.
Yeah.
What an incredible achievement.
Yeah, and just to get to be there, two of the girls on the team, Bree and Ruby, we used to train together 4 years ago before I retired. Ruby she's 11 years younger than me, so I can't even remember. She was like 13 when I was 24. So she used to really look up to me, and I used to think of her as a cute little younger sister. Brianna and I would share beams, and, we'd be sitting there going along. To make the Olympics together as well as the other two girls, it was incredible to have a team there.
No, I can imagine. And so when you went to actually perform, as an athlete, you've performed. You've got a gold medal from a World Cup. You've won multiple national titles. What does it really take to be a successful athlete, an elite athlete at the highest levels?
Oh gosh, I'm sure you would get a few different opinions and perspectives. I used to struggle. If we think about it, I think a lot of it is, and to sort of quote my mentor, performance is performance, and you kind of have to see it that way. In any elite sport, you're up there and you're performing. You really are. And that takes a lot of ability to believe in your capabilities yourself and to understand that you've done the work to be able to get up there and perform. I find that, I'll always get nervous before I compete, especially a competition to the magnitude of the Olympic Games. It's very nerve-wracking. You've got an incredibly large crowd. We were competing with Brazil, and so the crowd was predominantly Brazilian fans who are very, very loud.
Vocal supporters.
Oh, very vocal supporters. Fantastic. And as they should be, because Brazil's a fantastic team. But it's nerve-wracking. What helps to, I guess, use the nerves and drive the nerves as ammunition rather than make them stump you is knowing that you've done the preparation. So for me, I think I place a lot on your intentionality in your preparation to be able to perform really, really well. And that can be both physical and mental. I used to be really physically prepared when I was younger, and I didn't put no emphasis on mental performance and mental preparation. And then I would go to perform and I would realize, it's actually no use to me if I can physically do gymnastics when I'm up there and I'm in my head the entire time.
And the nerves take over.
Yeah. So really being prepared both physically and mentally and understanding that the nerves are okay. As, I'm sure a lot of people have probably heard, nerves mean you care.
I had
this is totally not comparable to the Olympics, but I had once quite a big speaking opportunity coming up to quite a large audience, and I had a speaking coach as part of this program, and he was taking me through, obviously, if I use an example, like the skills of speaking well, of tonality, of pauses, being intentional, but he also said, remember before you start, like have a morning that's intentional for you, and it's a really good way to start the day. It's super important. But just before you are about to present and you get on stage, you're going to get super nervous. You're probably going to feel your hands start to sweat. Your heart rate's going to go up, and he's like, expect those feelings, expect those reactions, and know that that is your body getting ready. Like you need adrenaline as well to perform. You can't do anything if you're bored and flat. So like, and I trained, and I did no mental training as well as an athlete. And I feel like that was an area that was definitely like such a big growth part of my journey that I never really explored. But it's so important in any athletics. But that just rewiring of like, it's okay, I'm going to feel this, but this is my body getting ready for the moment. Like it's actually helping me, as opposed to, like you said, using it to stump you.
Yeah, absolutely. There really is that body-mind connection. And so being able to utilize it well, I think I definitely noticed that when I was a kid, when I was younger and I would do big competitions, or, you get up to do public speaking at school, let's say, you don't have the same concerns. You don't have the same ability to figure out the consequences. You haven't learned the consequences of failing yet. And so you're less afraid of it, I really find. And then the older I got, like let's say post 17, 18, competitions started getting more scary to me, not because I didn't think I could do the gymnastics, right? When I was younger, I was scared of doing the gymnastics because I was like not as well prepared,
well, it's still a developing skill as a younger athlete.
Yeah. Whereas when I'm older, I can now do the gymnastics pretty consistently, but I'm now considering all the consequences if I don't. And that was a very different shift. And that's when I had to really learn, okay, there's a lot more mental things that come into gymnastics now that I'm a little bit older. And that played out both in my training and in my performance.
It's such a tough sport. What are some of those mental strategies or techniques that helped you or that you developed, particularly in the latter part of your career?
First and foremost, I worked with Dave on my language. So
Your
I used to be
internal dialogue?
Both, and external. I was so negative. Like I would just say just little things, right? Like, oh, I can't do this today. I'm so tired, or I hate this. And just, you bond sometimes as a team complaining. I was so fantastic at complaining, really, really good. And I felt like it helped me get through the things that I was doing. But I didn't realize that all it was doing was making the gymnastics training harder. That's really all I was doing. I was just fueling how difficult everything was. I was just making it more difficult for myself. So language was the first thing. And the way to change that was I had to develop that awareness around it first. So I can't fully remember, but things like catching myself saying, I can't do this today. And I would just
awareness being the first step.
Yeah, I'd be like, oh, wait, why did I say that? I'm about to do it. So why am I saying that? It had no validation in there. So it was just making the fact that I still had to do it harder. So I would turn around and I'd be like, oh, wait, don't say that. And so now I'd be like, I'm feeling a little bit flat today, but I'll get through 3 of these. Just a tiny language shift.
Yeah. So you're not masking the way that you're feeling, but you just like it's a minor change, but makes a big difference.
Yeah. Just shifting ever so slightly my language in what I say. And I brought that naturally stemmed into my life outside of sport, which was even more powerful. And I started noticing it I wouldn't even just do it in gymnastics. I'd do it in everything. And it was very limiting for me. So I just opened that up a little bit. I remember that got tested a little bit when in 2018 or 17, we got a new warm-up for the national team. And this warm-up, we had to do morning and afternoon, and it was the hardest warm-up I've ever done in my life. I will put my life on it that my Achilles ruptured because of this warm-up. Anyway, it was intense. It was really, really hard. And I remember calling Dave and just saying, you got to help me. How do I get through this warm up? How do I do it? It's so hard. And all he could really offer me was, is it bad enough for you to quit? Is it bad enough for you to give up on your dream? And I was like, is that really all you're going to give me? You can't tell me something else. Like, give me some strategy.
Can you just agree with me and like, let's just both vent this out together?
Yeah, exactly. Can we just complain? And I just thought about it, and it was really that simple. Like, so just little simple strategies like that. That was the first thing. Then obviously later down the track, it became more, I guess, like intense in terms of creating like a funnel. So a structure of for the 7 days in the lead up to a competition, this is what I have to do every day to know that when I get to the competition, I'm prepared. Ways to sort of not override your emotions, but to make sure that you're validated in knowing that you're prepared despite the feeling of self-doubt you get before such a big event. I had a strategy of bouncing some balls and reciting some words to myself to enhance my confidence and my assertiveness. So little things like that. I would call them like mindset tricks.
Yeah, for yourself. No, really, really powerful. You left gymnastics, I think, 2 times in your career. What is it the injuries that made you leave?
No, in 2017, I ruptured my Achilles in the lead up to the 2018 Commonwealth Games, and I had 9 months to get back, and everyone said to me, oh, that's going to be a really short window. And I said, oh, I'm just going to give it a go anyway.
Really awkward injury.
Awkward, yeah. And it's just uncomfortable. And it's quite a mental game too. I found that I physically recovered before I mentally recovered.
Yeah.
I would get really scared of jumping because I had ruptured it whilst jumping. So that took me a little while to get over, but I didn't get medically cleared to make the 2018 Commonwealth Games team, even though I did do the trial. So by this stage, I'd already missed out on 2016 Olympics because we didn't qualify a team, and I just felt like all of these things just kept happening to me that were outside of my control. And at that point, I was so over it.
Yeah.
I was just over gymnastics. I had wanted to retire in 2016 after going to the Olympics. So when we didn't make the Olympics, I said, all right, I'll give it 2 more years and go to Com Games. And I just, at that point, I hadn't lived much life outside of gymnastics. I'd been traveling and representing Australia since 13, and I was now, 20? And so I just wanted to stop. I just wanted to stop and just enjoy life a little bit. That lasted 6 months. And then I realized that, oh, actually, life's not all that great unless you make it great, right? And then I realized, oh, well, okay, I can make life great and do gymnastics and fulfill my dream of going to the Olympics.
So is that what brought you back?
Yeah.
Like, were you looking for purpose? Was it like, were you missing that feeling?
Yeah, I realized that I was maybe just not willing to do what it took to get to where I wanted to be. And there were just some little missing pieces within there that I could improve on. So it took that 6-month break. I got a job in marketing. I went on a family holiday, and we went away for 3 weeks to Europe together. First time ever going on a family holiday. And I sat my parents down in Croatia and I said, I think I'm going to go back. That was the first time. They're like, oh my God, okay. And I just said, I'll just go for 2 more years. I can do 2 more years. I'll just make it to Tokyo Olympics and be done. And so that was the real reason. It wasn't because of injury. I just was over it. I was burnt out.
And when you came back, it really feels like you came back as almost a different athlete.
Oh, hugely.
You came back on your own terms in a way that like you got perspective from leaving.
Oh, both times. So after the little short break where it was like a fake retirement, I came back, and that's when I said, okay, I need a mental performance coach, and that's when I got working with Dave. Then when I had the 3.5-year break, I struggled a heck of a lot with loss of identity, with my hormones, with my metabolic system. I gained weight, struggled with my body image.
Yeah, I'd love to actually hear a little bit more about that. Like before we started, we were talking a little bit about identity loss as an athlete after like everything you know about yourself is associated with the sport. It's how other people know you, because it's like, hey, it's Emma the gymnast. Everything is about the sport. What was that identity crisis like? Like what exactly is that for anyone listening that might not quite understand it?
Yeah, it's funny. I had a chat about this yesterday. The Australian Olympic Committee, they've organised some things for transitioning athletes to be able to support themselves ahead of going through this. So I think that it's finally getting highlighted. I'm obviously speaking about it in hindsight. At the time, if I bring myself back to the time, the first year out of gymnastics, I enjoyed not being a gymnast anymore. I was like, this is amazing. Then after that first year, I sort of started to realize that, oh, wait a second. I think I kind of liked being a gymnast. I think I liked that part of me and, oh, I don't have that anymore. What's going to fill that void? And I didn't quite understand who I was without it because I really felt like gymnastics was what made me special. And so I felt like all of a sudden I maybe wasn't as special anymore. And I look back on it now and obviously that wasn't what made me special, right? Like I'm Emma and I just happened to be good at gymnastics. But back then all I thought about was the fact that all I was good at was gymnastics. And you go from being at the absolute top of your game to then being at the bottom of the ladder at 24 years old, having no idea really what I wanted to pursue. I knew that I kind of wanted to go into the business field. I knew what I sort of wanted my life to look like down the train, but I didn't know how to get there.
Yeah.
And I was talking to a lot of people and loads of people are saying to me, oh, you're fine, you can do this and you're great at this and you've got these strengths. And I'm thinking to myself, well, that's great, but like, well, how's that going to help me? And so that was really a struggle for me. And then I started gaining weight and coming from a judgmental sport like gymnastics, that terrified me. That really added to the loss of identity because all of a sudden I looked in the mirror and I didn't even see the person that I knew anymore.
It's quite like it. Yeah, it's almost like a really sad feeling. I remember going through something similar. I had to stop playing at 17 as I was about to go onto the world tour. And I had no plan to go to uni. And suddenly I'm at uni doing a general business degree. And I felt like that exact same feeling, like a real loss of identity. And it was almost like, for me, it felt like a really numb state where I was just doing the rounds. I'm going to these classes. I had a part-time job and I'm doing it for 6 months straight. And I was like, I can't keep doing this anymore. And so I told my dad, I was like, I'm dropping out of uni. I may as well get a job. Like I may as well start building some skills and doing something where I feel like I'm achieving goals. Because for me, like you're competing to be the best at your sport. And suddenly, like for me, the feeling was I'm average. And I don't mean that to sound like bad, but like it was a really strange feeling. Oh. And I told my dad, like, it's time to like finish this uni thing. And he had a really important conversation with me at that time where he's like, I think you're forgetting who you actually are. Because like in your head, he's like, you think you're a tennis player or you were a tennis player. And he's like, who you actually were. He's like, you were someone who had an incredible work ethic, who didn't give up, who saw things through. And you happened to be really good at tennis because you dedicated a sheer amount of time playing the sport. And like, it's just such a small mental shift of like who I actually am isn't a competitor in this sport, but like I'm all of these things and the reason I'm good at this sport is for these reasons. And it changed everything for me in terms of my perspective on life.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Like the reason why we become good at the things that we do is because we have the skill sets to be able to enable us that. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
And everyone has their own individual strengths and weaknesses. A lot of athletes have very similar strengths.
Yeah,
exactly. But it's recognizing that you don't develop. Yes, I don't know. I don't know what the formula is. Like maybe you're born with it and then you grow along the sport with it, or maybe some of them you develop in the sport. Either way, I'm a firm believer you can use sport to succeed in life.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. It's like an element of nature and nurture. Some of it you might be born with, but there's a whole lot of nurturing to develop skills as well. But when you started gaining weight, because that would have been really challenging. I remember like reading a little bit about this part of your story where you didn't even know why you were gaining such like weight in such a rapid period of time.
Yeah, I look back now and I'm like, oh, actually, I kind of know what happened. I stopped exercising so much. I went vegan for a year. I was drinking a lot, because I was on a TV show and it was really fun. We were like going out all the time. And so I wasn't looking after myself. Let's put it that way. That's probably where I gained the weight. Where I struggled most was that I couldn't lose it. I had no idea how to lose it. And there's that much controversial media out on TikTok, Instagram, everything. I was down those rabbit holes, let me tell you. Started counting my calories, started exercising twice a day to no avail, could not lose the weight. And it just got, I look back now and I'm like, oh my gosh, Emma, you are so over the top. But I'd come from a life in gymnastics where we've been told our whole lives, oh, you're fat, you got to lose weight. And to lose weight, you got to eat off these dessert-sized plates because you're eating too much food. Oh, you're having 2 eggs, that's too much, you can only have 1. Or sneaking lollies into our rooms. Just a bad culture, right? And then, I shouldn't say bad, but it just was the culture then. And then, things like my coach one time, she held up a cup of water and said, see this weighs, stop drinking so much water. So I just didn't have.
That's crazy.
I know. But I just didn't have the knowledge for myself. I was really fortunate that growing up, my parents were able to, my mum made all my food. So it was relatively healthy all the time. So I never thought about it. But now I'm like 25. I have to do it myself. What the heck do I do, right? And so I just struggled. I couldn't figure it out, had multiple doctor's appointments. I think I even had an MRI on my pituitary gland, because I'd also lost my period. Yeah. So we linked it back to hormones. It took me going to a naturopath. She referred me on to Dean Kilby, who found Simpler Health, who I now work with, right? And he put me through this metabolic reset program, ended up losing the weight, but that wasn't the transformation I needed. It wasn't really the weight loss. The weight wasn't the issue, right? It was I had to find out who I am now. And so it was actually in that transformation, working with Dean, that I found out who I am without gymnastics and without that identity. Because like I said, it was looking in the mirror. It wasn't really the weight gain that was the problem. It was not seeing the person that I thought I was. And so when I actually did lose the weight, I still didn't look like Emma the gymnast anymore. And that took me a long time to come to terms with. And let me tell you, that was really hard for me when I stepped back into gymnastics. I had to really try hard not to compare myself to who I was before.
Yeah, because the standard was different.
Very different. And I'm a completely different person. And that's why I put a lot more emphasis on strength training. I was a completely different beast this time going back into gymnastics.
Mentally and physically.
Yeah.
And you started a number of ventures outside of the sport. So you're a health coach, you're a co-founder of a fitness brand that's got the fitness duffel bags. You started your own podcast. You're a board member. How did all these other ventures come about? Because I've also heard you say that gymnasts don't make a lot of money. Like, it's not exactly how you're going to make a living.
Oh my gosh, thank you for remembering all of that. Even my boyfriend's like, I don't remember what you do. So with the nutrition stuff, fell into that because the opportunity arose. I started working with Dean and he said, hey, I love what you're about. I love what you're doing. I think he really saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. He gave me an opportunity to see a life outside of gymnastics. So that's where I did my sports nutrition certification. And I really love helping people. And one of the things that I can help people through is my experiences.
Yeah.
So I felt like it was really fitting for me to coach people through this program that I had done myself. And I found that sharing the lessons I'd learned in sport with people that don't necessarily come from a background of sport was really useful. And so that was really motivating for me. That's why I got into that. RTM Sport, Georgia Rose, who is my teammate, best friend, co-founder, we started that together in 2018 because we recognised gymnastics makes no money and we were like, let's start a small business and make some money. Anyone that has a small business knows that that's fantastic, but is it going to generate enough revenue for you to fund your gymnastics career? Unlikely, unless you take it on as a full-time job, which we did not. So it still runs, but it didn't pay for us to do gymnastics. We're only now being able to ramp it up because Georgia's just finished her master's in physio.
Everything requires time, hard work and dedication. Something I've learned is there is no easy pathway to anything.
Yeah. The board role, like I said, I had always wanted to go into business. My dad's on a few boards and I thought to myself, why don't I just look into a board role? And the YMCA Whittlesea was looking to hire young people for their board. And so I applied for it and got in, and that has been a huge learning experience for me. And then now I have a business mentor that I got through another network called Minerva Network. She's a non-executive director and she's teaching me a lot about boards as well. So that's just another little path, adds to the pile of what I'm doing. And then the podcast was predominantly because I found a passion for supporting athletes through retirement. I think I really had found a passion for helping people through doing nutrition coaching. I love it. It's really empowering for both myself and the people that I work with. And so I thought, well, why don't I bring that into sport? So have a newfound love for gymnastics after going through the roller coaster of hating it, loving it, back to loving it. So I thought, well, how can I contribute back to the gymnastics community? So that was a big reason why I started the podcast, was to share my experiences and get other athletes to share theirs, see what they're up to outside of gymnastics. I did put it on hold when I decided to create my little venture of going to the Olympics. But
the Olympics took some priority there.
Yes, that required my full-time attention. Yeah. But I do want to keep, kicking it off a little bit, see what else I can do in that space. So I also want to create a gymnastics alumni program, because I really did realize that I think a little missing piece is, for us athletes, doesn't matter when you finish up, if you've been doing it since you were a kid, it shapes the person that you are. And I think what's really important there is to recognize it. As an Olympian, we get fantastic recognition for what we've done for representing Australia. It's enormous, the support you get, and it's really, really special. And I've got friends who did gymnastics to the same level as me. They spent 32 hours a week in gymnastics. School was secondary to their gymnastics, but they never quite made it, and they quit at about 16, 17. Really
similar story.
Yeah, that really pivotal age where you're figuring out who you're going to be in this world. And they felt like they just never fully got what they'd put in. And so I feel like recognizing that and saying, hey, you're an awesome person because of the things that you've done in this sport, that will be really powerful, or at least I hope it will be. So
that is incredible. You're doing so many amazing things, and like, you're right, you call it a community. It absolutely is a community, and you're focusing on gymnastics. It's where you come from, but it's these shared experiences that athletes experience across all sports, and especially that post-career transition, because kind of like mental strength and mental techniques, when I was growing up, there was no emphasis on it. It was like just a physical part of the sport, like you're doing fitness, you're training, you're kind of sometimes thinking about food, but the mental element didn't exist. And then especially post-career, like nothing is in that space. And there's nothing, there really still isn't a lot of programs today to help athletes in that transition. So what you're doing is absolutely incredible. And I wish you all the best with that.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Yeah, I'm excited.
Were you doing any of these ventures as you were training this year? Did you have to balance doing professional commitments and training?
Look, yes. For the first 3 months, yes. I was still coaching a handful of clients through Simpler Health. That was my main role. Our team sport was just plodding along. I'm packaging up the bags, sending them out weekly. That's fine. I enjoy doing that. It's very gratifying when we get an order and I'm like, oh my gosh, yes.
It's very exciting.
Yeah. And then I was going to board meetings, but that's once a month, so that's okay. Read some papers, gives me some light reading to do. Hadn't thought about the alumni program yet, and I stopped doing the podcast. I didn't stop doing the podcast because I didn't have the capacity though. It was because I hate editing.
It's a lot. It's a lot of it's a lot of effort, a lot of resource required.
Such an effort, and because it's such an effort, and I'm time poor. I would pay someone else to do it, and all of a sudden now all of my funds were going to gymnastics. Hence why, I've got the most phenomenal parents, and they said, we'll support you. So they covered a lot of my gymnastics expenses, but I still had to pay for everything else around that. And all of a sudden my life was just consumed with, if I wasn't training, I was either resting or I was eating well or I was at physio or chiro or something like that.
Which is another challenge, because you've got to train. It's a full-time commitment, which doesn't leave you time to make an income. To support life and living as you're on this journey to try get to the absolute pinnacle of what the sport is.
Yeah, it was somewhat of a blessing that the timeline was actually kind of short, because I don't think that I could do it ongoingly. I'm trying to still train now, and trying is the word that I'm using, because I would love to go to World Cups next year, and I'd love to go to World Championships. My goal when I came back was not necessarily to go to the Olympics and be done. I wanted to keep going a little bit, but to go to one World Cup, it's about 10 grand. Sponsorship doesn't really exist in the gymnastics space.
I was just about to ask you about that.
I'm going to say yes.
Is there an opportunity for more sponsorship to support athletes who might stop earlier in the journey because it just becomes too much of a challenge trying to self-fund?
I don't know. That's what I'm looking into as well. Just on the side. I mean, it comes naturally, right? I think for sponsors, it's difficult for them to sponsor an individual. This is kind of the insight that I guess I got when I left the sport. When I was deep in the sport, I was like, I don't understand why people won't sponsor me. I'm so cool. Like, I do gymnastics, sponsor me. No, sorry, they don't care how cool you are. You need to be able to bring the company something. And as an individual athlete, you can't really put all your eggs in one basket. That doesn't really lead you anywhere, whether it's in business or in sport. You just never know what's going to happen. So where I think the sponsorship capability can come from is probably from sponsoring Gymnastics Australia or our high performance team.
Yeah.
I would love to work towards that, which is kind of why I'm still actively in the gym, because I think that we can get there. I really do think that gymnastics is worth sponsoring. The problem is it gets a big hype around Olympics and then after that it drops down. So I think it's about getting the athletes out there, getting the wider community to understand what gymnastics is really about. Gymnastics in the past hasn't really been relatable, and in recent times it's been really negative with what's gone on. Plus, in the past, it was like you do gymnastics to 16, 18, and then you retire.
Yeah, much younger career typically for gymnasts.
Whereas now I'm 28.
Yeah, which is like
Old.
I'm older than you, so like I'm not going to call you old, but for a gymnast, the career is typically much younger. Like, is that being much older?
Yeah, it's changed now, right? So basically in the past 10 years, it's probably changed.
Yeah.
So now that holds more capability for sponsorship because kids can follow along an athlete for a longer time rather than just up until they're 16, then they drop off the face of the planet and you have no idea where they are or who they are. Whereas now you can follow along, not only that, but you've got social media. You can follow people, what they're doing.
Yeah, branding is so different today. And then obviously as the longevity of the sport has changed for lots of different reasons, it changes the dynamics as well and the different kind of points of like promotional sponsorship that the sport can receive and get endorsed by. And then the social media has also had such a huge impact. As well.
Yeah, the only flaw with social media is it's up to you to do that yourself. And for a lot of gymnasts, fantastic performance doesn't really mean we're extroverts. I am, but I'm probably like one of the select few. A lot of them are introverted. So, I think that if we can get it for the Gymnastics Australia as a whole, that would be ideal. There's also so many possibilities that come from gymnastics. Like a lot of people that are either professional sports athletes or whatever they do in life, they've at some point learned how to do a cartwheel. Like they've at least some point know of or they have done gymnastics themselves. So it is a very relatable big sport. We just have to sort of create it that way because, like I said, I just don't think it's the most relatable sport or it hasn't been in the past. So trying to bridge that gap of how we make it that way.
Yeah, so much opportunity. When you look back at your entire career, all the setbacks, all the accomplishments, what are you most proud of?
Oh, that's a tricky question. I would say there's a couple like situations that I'm proud of, such as, when I was younger, I won beam at a competition in 2011 and that was a really intimidating competition for me. I was like 14 years old in Germany, I think. And that was a really proud moment for me because it was a huge competition. One of the biggest comps I will ever go to, right? And I won it and it was amazing. So that was something I was really proud of. But I think overall, what I've been really proud of is to be able to sit here today and to be able to share what I've done and hope that that inspires other people or empowers other people to know that they can achieve the things that they go for as well. I'm just proud to have made it through. Let's put it that way. I'm proud to have gotten to where I have because that's something really special and I'm really excited to keep going. I really am a firm believer that there is like no top of the mountain. You're just constantly always going up and up and up. And so I'm just proud to have made it to this level, to look out and be really grateful for where I'm at. And yeah, I'd say that's the biggest.
That's amazing. I love that. There's no top of the mountain because you could easily look back at your career and like it's almost like a pinnacle and a highlight. But I love that, just that mindset and the approach of like there's no top of the mountain. You're constantly reinventing yourself as well as you move through all different stages in life. You've been called the Beam Queen. I've definitely seen this come up in the media. What made you fall in love with gymnastics initially and do you have a favourite event?
Initially, what made me fall in gymnastics, no idea. Cannot pinpoint it. I just started it because I started it. My mum put me in it. I think I was naturally pretty good at it. I got the coach's interest. Then we got a Chinese coach come over to our little club. I was at an Epping YMCA, hence I'm on a YMCA board. And she came in, she took a liking to me immediately. And I spent 2 hours on balance beam and 1 hour on everything else. And so my favorite event is the balance beam. But that is because I naturally then became really good at it. I like it because it's the easiest one for me to do.
It's so good to like things you're good at. Like I've heard someone talk about this, I think it was a business leader, and he's like, people always say follow your passions and do what you love. Really great sentiment, but like first find something you're good at and start with that, because you just tend to like things more, put in more effort, put in more work in the things that you're good at.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it really drives that skill for sure. And same thing with my coach, right? If my coach wasn't good at it, then she wouldn't have put me through as much on beam either. So I attribute a lot of my success in my gymnastics career to my coaches for sure. They've helped me excel in a multitude of ways. When I was younger, I was actually quite lazy.
So like they were helping with the discipline and the effort and the training and the commitment.
Yeah, I mean, like I wasn't lazy in terms of not doing my program. I would do it and I would show up every single day. But if I could not do it, I would not do it. And they always made sure they knew what I was doing.
Yeah, and it was always like, we're going to do this.
Yeah.
You can do this.
They didn't let me get away with things, no.
Last question, Emma. Looking back on everything you've accomplished and overcome, what would you say to someone who's facing their own set of challenges but has big dreams and goals that they're pursuing in their life? What advice would you leave them with?
It's always a hard one because I feel as though there's so much that I would want to tell someone, and especially depending on their circumstances. If there's one thing that I have learned and one thing that I sort of live by now, I struggle with patience a lot. And when I think about it, I really had to just be patient in my dreams and in my goals. I had this goal of going to the Olympics and I thought that it was going to happen for me in 2016, and it happened 8 years later.
Yeah.
And I think what sticks out for me there is if you're patient and if you just keep working, right? You just keep doing what you do. Doesn't mean you need to be on a completely linear path, right? I took myself completely out of gymnastics and then back in. So that was not a linear path. But you can achieve the things that you want as long as you keep working towards it and just let it be and go with the flow. I used an analogy yesterday that I was really proud of. I ride motorbikes, and
that is so cool.
One thing, yeah, I can thank my dad for that. One thing that they tell you is when you're turning a corner, don't like grip the handlebars really, really hard. Don't stiffen up, because if you stiffen up, you won't be able to turn. You'll just like go straight or follow your eye line.
I've heard there's a physics and a dynamics like when you're turning on a motorbike.
Yeah, big time. So what they tell you is you have to relax. You have to relax your arms, relax your hands in the bike. You'll just go. You'll just turn, right? Look where you're going. You'll just turn. And so that was the analogy I used yesterday. I felt really fancy. Just let it be. Just really trust that if you're doing the right thing, you're getting up every day, you're showing up and you're working towards your future goal, things are going to pop up along the way. They're going to challenge you, and embrace that challenge. Be ready for the things that come at you. I think it's false to believe that it's going to ever be a smooth path. As you said, nothing that is worthwhile is easy. And so embrace the challenges rather than be afraid of them. Embrace them, because getting through them is what creates the person that you need to be at your dream. I'm really grateful that I made 2024 Olympic Games as the person I am today, and I didn't make 2016, because in hindsight, looking back, I don't think I would have experienced it the same way I have now. I wouldn't have had the same gratitude, and I would have absolutely struggled afterwards, because in 2016, the Olympics was the top of my mountain. Now, the Olympics is a part way up.
That is so powerful. Emma, thank you so much. You are incredibly inspiring. There is no top of the mountain for you. And you like the energy you bring is just incredible. I can't wait for our listeners to hear this episode.
Oh, thank you so much.